God speaks to us and he uses our dreams. You know how many times I get asked by people, how does God actually speak? How do you hear his voice? When you picture God speaking, you think, is it a thunder cloud, like thunder from heaven? Is it something you just hear inside of your heart? Well, one of the main ways that God actually speaks is through dreams. And so today I want to start a series, Decoding Your Dreams with Jesus. And today we're going to highlight a few principles in hearing God speak through your dreams. That is standards we need to live by and keep as important foundation blocks for dream interpretation and hearing God. God's desire is that each and every one of us actually hear from him. He does want to be involved in our lives, and he wants to be involved in the little details that you might think sometimes God is so far off. Maybe you think he's, my dad used to call him the man up in the sky. And he's not. He's a relational God. And the reason Jesus died was to bring that relationship. And so he actually promises us in Acts 2:17-18, he says, in the last days, I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, all people. And he says that my sons and my daughters will prophesy. They will see visions and they will dream dreams. He says, I will pour even on my servants, both men and women, I will pour out my spirit in those days and they will prophesy. So this is a promise to each and every one of us. And this is to believers, right? Because it's the Spirit of God that is poured out. And so in order to understand, the first principle is that God speaks in the dreams, and therefore we're going to make the Bible our foundation. You can't hear from God if you don't know your Bible. You have to make sure that you grow in learning what is in the Bible. Therefore, you will be able to understand and pick up what God is actually saying. And there's many sources out there. Many. I remember being in the world, right? And in the world, like when I say in the world, I mean before I gave my life to the Lord and before I was born again of the Spirit of God. I used to get dreams, but I used to go search on Google, and I'd come across dream dictionaries and many people weighing in on what your dreams mean. And it would be completely opposite to what it actually means. And I've learned that now, since I started a relationship with the Lord and became born again of the Spirit. I learned that what I was reading in these things was actually polar opposite to what God wanted to say. So the Bible has to come in as a building block. God speaks not only to believers, but he also speaks to unbelievers. So although you need the Spirit of God, right? When you're born of the Spirit, you need the Spirit of God to understand your dreams. 1 Corinthians 2:12-14 says, now we have received not the spirit of the world, but the Spirit who is from God, that we might understand the things freely given to us by God. And we impart these in words taught not by human wisdom, but taught by the Spirit, interpreting spiritual truths to those who are spiritual. So although God speaks to both believers and unbelievers, you need the Spirit of God to understand your dreams. That is a very, very important principle. So he spoke to believers. One example is Matthew 2:19-21 in the Bible. This was to Jesus's dad, his father, Joseph. And obviously God wanted to keep Jesus safe because there were people that wanted to kill him. And so he speaks to his father and he says, after Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. And he said to him, get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel. For those who were trying to take the child's life are now dead. So he gives him a very directional dream. He gives him an instruction. He wants to move Joseph, Jesus, and Mary to a new space, and he speaks through a dream. This was a literal dream, so Joseph could understand it straight away. He spoke to Solomon in a dream. In fact, he gives Solomon his call in a dream. He spoke to Daniel. He speaks to Jacob in a dream. He speaks to Job in a dream. And in the New Testament, we also see him speaking to Pilate's wife, Paul, Peter, John, The wise men, you name it, God spoke. We can see the trace of him speaking to believers, but we also see him speaking to unbelievers, right? And he actually draws, I've heard so many stories of God revealing himself to even Muslims through dreams, and then turning to Jesus Christ, right? Being total unbelievers, but him revealing himself and them being saved through their dreams. Abimelech was a king that wasn't a believer. And we see a dream example of God speaking to him in Genesis 20:3-7. And what happens here is Abraham comes to the place where Abimelech is, and he tells his wife Sarah, tell him you are my sister. Not sure why he did this. I think he was just scared maybe that she was too beautiful, and he wants to find favor with Abimelech. So he lies and she lies. And God reveals himself to this king. And he says that, he tells Abraham, leave this woman alone, for she is married. So he gives a truth to Abimelech, even as an unbeliever. And this was also a literal dream. It didn't require any interpretation. And it was instructional. Imagine he missed it. There's so many examples of God speaking to unbelievers in the Word. So the other principle that is very important is that dream interpretation needs the Spirit of God to be understood, but dream interpretation is also a skill, and you can actually grow in it. Daniel 1:17 says, and for these 4 youth, God gave them learning, knowledge, and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. And if you know anything about Daniel in the Bible, he had a lot of dreams and visions, especially about the end times. God spoke to him about things in dreams and visions. But it actually says here that he understood and he grew in wisdom and understanding. So although you need the Spirit of God, you can actually grow in it. You learn. And so this has been my journey. I've just taken my journey with God in my dreams and I've stewarded them. So the other principle you really need to understand when I talk about steward, I'm talking about your response to God. You know, there's no encounter with God that shouldn't lead to an assignment. So when God speaks to us in dreams, we need to do something with it. There's a response required from me and you. And I remember with me, what happened was I had this wild dream, and I heard this verse from God. I had it in my heart. I'd heard the verse before, that God pours out his Spirit and we dream dreams and see visions. And so I prayed about it, didn't quite understand what the dream meant. And that night we had a conference at the church I was attending at the time. And the guy that was actually speaking to us introduced his topic, and his topic was hearing God's voice through your dreams. And immediately I understood that God was starting something new and he wanted me to respond. And so I went home, I took out a journal, I wrote a letter to God. I put the verse down in the beginning of the journal as a promise to me. God said, you said I can hear from you and that you'll pour out your Spirit upon me. And I want to hear from you in my dreams, Lord. And when you speak to me, I'm going to record them and write them down. So you need to understand that that is the important journey that you need to go on with your dreams. Don't disregard them. Get a journal. Can even be an electronic journal, and start writing your dreams down. And then to understand them, you need the Spirit of God. To interpret and to build, you need to know your Bible. So you need to read your Bible. Your Bible needs to be the biblical foundation of hearing God. Don't go to other sources. They're just going to lead you in the wrong direction. So I'm going to go live on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on my YouTube channel, where we will be looking at different dreams, learning how to understand them. We're going to interpret dreams online, and I'm going to teach you what God has taught me over the last couple of years. And you are going to hear and understand what he's been saying to you.